Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom with our host, Bob Olson, who will now introduce today's show and speaker.
WCAT Radio presents I Thought You'd Like to Know This, a program featuring very interesting people who may have a message for you. And today we have a man from New Mexico. His name is Jerry. Jerry, welcome to our program tonight. And what's that little town you live in?
Thank you. I live in Corona, New Mexico. It's a small village and right in the center of the state, basically. It's 7,500 feet up in the air, getting closer to God every day.
Wow. So what do you do there?
I'm retired now. I'm 80 years old, and I live on a little ranch. It never was a big ranch like those guys over in Texas, but I live on a little ranch. I used to raise cattle, but I'm retired now.
You're retired, so you have a ranch there then?
Small. Years ago, I used to be a school teacher. I was born in Michigan in Highland Park. That's near Detroit.
Wow.
There. And I went to St. Benedict's School and then high school.
Well, wait a while. Let's go back. Now, you were a cradle Catholic.
Oh, yeah, born and raised. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and tell us about your early days and how you got introduced to the Catholic Church.
Well, my parents were immigrants, like a lot of people that came to America in turn of the century, 1900 and stuff, and tried to better themselves. And they were Catholic of faith. They met here in America and married and had a good Catholic family, 6 children, and I was the last. I used to be called Ruck because I was short and skinny.
Oh, no.
Many, many years ago, young man. And we lived in Highland Park, which was a suburb of Detroit, where Henry Ford started his car factory there, the first factory.
Well, I lived in Michigan for over 35 years, owned a radio station up there in the Upper Peninsula, and you know where that is.
Yes, across the new bridge they got. I think they built that bridge in 57 or 58, didn't they?
Oh, yeah, and that was quite an adventure. Quite a few people died, when they constructed that bridge. They fell into, they were setting up the columns, for the poles, and some of them people fell into cement.
Wow.
And they couldn't rescue them. So, but anyway, that's called the Mackinac Bridge.
Mackinac Bridge, yeah, that's it.
Mackinac Bridge. Okay, so what about your early education now? You went to Catholic school?
Yes, right where we lived in Highland Park, there was a beautiful cathedral type, the old churches years ago in the 20s and turn of the century, 1900. They really made beautiful churches to copy the churches in Rome and Europe, and it was called St. Benedict's. And they had a grade school and a high school. And that's where I started in the grade school, right over there.
And in those days, they were all nuns, huh?
Yes, they had a convent for the nuns, and they had the other building there was a rectory for the Monsignor and the other priests that helped them. And we had like a gymnasium auditorium there, and then the grade school and the high school. All on one. It was between 2 city blocks, block wide, and the church had built all that up. And that's what.
Did you have a pretty good education there?
I think so. It was Sisters of St. Joseph. They were out of Kalamazoo. They did charity work, mainly school teaching and elder care. I guess they didn't call it that back then. But the main convent was in Kalamazoo, Michigan, which was maybe west of Detroit, maybe 100 miles,
I think I knew one of those sisters that was up in Gaylord, but I'm not sure now. That was a while back. But so, what were some of the things? Do you remember some of the things you had to do? You have to learn your prayers and so forth.
Oh, sure. And when we'd go to church, in the morning, we all sat in the pews before we go to school, have Mass in the morning.
You went to Mass every day?
Every morning before you went to school.
There's still some schools that are doing that, which is good.
I had a good, strong Catholic upbringing. Maybe I wasn't the sharpest light bulb that learned spelling and grammar and English and all that, but I made it through life, and now I'm in my golden years, I guess, where you just sit back and read books and work out in the garden a little bit and look up at the sky and see that it's beautiful up here.
Now, you learned the Rosary, you learned the Our Father,
I learned all the Catholic prayers, Apostles' Creed, all of it.
You learned them all.
Listen, they all copied the Catholic Church, young man. When Catholics broke off from Judaism, remember back then, don't you, when Jesus came? Okay, and then we all became, at that time I wasn't around, but you know what I mean, that people were Catholic, or they were pagan, or they were Jew. There was no in between.
Right.
And then through the centuries, the rest of the faiths, which are good people, the Presbyterians and the Methodists and the Baptists are good people. God will accept everybody, but the Catholic Church is the right church.
I was interviewing the priest, I think it was last week, maybe a couple weeks ago, and he said that his school, it was in Massachusetts, and he said his K-8 school was the best school that he ever attended. I mean, he's talking about high school and college, and he said that's where the impetus started for his journey to become a priest.
I see.
And that's why it's so important in those lower grades to set the stage.
It is, and I can remember that Monsignor would come around maybe once a week to all the classes, and like you say, kindergarten to 8th grade, and he'd come in and everything was just perfectly quiet. The nun would be up in the front of the room, and he'd bless us and tell us what good jobs we were doing and just keep it up. He was a nice old white-haired old man when I was a little kid in short pants. But
were you a pretty good kid?
I can't hear you, sir. What was?
Were you a pretty good kid in school?
Oh, I imagine I was like any other young person. We all have to go through stages.
The nuns kept you in line, though, right?
Oh, they sure did. But they taught well. They taught with love, I believe, in our grammar school. Let's call it grammar school before we passed into high school. They taught with love. They weren't mean. They were just stern, and they wanted you to learn. Hey, when I graduated high school at St. Benedict's, I could type 62 words a minute on a Royal typewriter, They don't do that kind of stuff anymore. But
no, that's true.
The girls learned that Greg shorthand to go be secretary ladies and work and whatever they wanted to do. And everybody had to take typing. It was like taking handwriting when you were a child. I guess they don't even teach handwriting in schools anymore.
Yeah, I think we got to get back to basics a little more again.
We got to get back to where we came from. God gave us a beautiful world and our lives to live in it, and some people just let it slip away from them,
What do you think was the best part of grammar school?
Oh, I guess at Easter time, Mother used to color eggs up, and we'd take them over to the convent and give them to the nuns, and they were so happy to get them, and things of that thing. It was a good community of working-class people. Most everybody worked at the Ford or the Chrysler factory, like Dad worked at Ford's,
Right.
Just basic, downright good American citizens and good Christians or Catholic or whatever faith you followed back then. we were lucky to be raised Catholic, our parents and us.
Yes, sir. And so you graduated from grammar school, and
then the high school building was right next door, right in the same block. You know what I mean? So I went for my 4 years to the high school, and we had little biology, chemistry lab, you know, where we dissected a frog. Everything everybody does in a public school, we did, you know.
Yeah. But you also had spirituality, though.
Oh, yes, we had religion. Yes, we did.
And
one good thing, you know, during lunch hour, right across from the big fancy church was the parking lot in that complex. And at that time, in the mid-40s, or, well, in high school, it was early 50s, the priests had built, they built handball courts for us guys to play handball with. Do you ever play handball?
Oh, yes.
I guess today today the people play racquetball. They go to fancy clubs. They got a little paddle or whatever. But we used to bounce that ball with our hands up against that big board.
And you had those outside, huh? You had those outside in the parking lot?
Yeah, outside the church parking lot, at the very end of it, they had a couple handball courts.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So what were some of your thoughts in those days about God and about Jesus and so forth? Do you remember any of those things when you were in high school?
Being a religious school and not a public school, we had our religious class and we celebrated all the holy days and things. In the 40s and 50s, when I graduated in the early 50s, before I went off to the Army and all that, it was a different world. People paid respect to most everybody. If there was a woman standing up on the streetcar, you know, it used to be 6 cents to ride the streetcar. You'd give up and you give the lady the chair in the trolley or streetcar. But you don't see that anymore, you know.
No.
And we have to get back to our basic upbringings of what made this country great and what made the Catholic Church great and the only church to be with.
What were some of the things that you learned in high school, you think, I mean, as far as your spirituality was concerned, that helped you, you know, in later days that you could fall back on?
I think, to be honest, not to be conniving might be the word, or storytelling, or I don't know. I did go on to the University of Detroit to get my time in to get a teaching certificate, you know, and then I taught school for a while. And now that I'm retired, I teach in the high school here in Corona. You get a license from the state, you know, and all that, and you could substitute teaching. So about maybe twice a month, sometimes 3, I'll get a call, and it's usually ahead of time, excuse me, because here the system in this public schools in our county, at least, or rural areas, they only go to school Monday through Thursday. They're off.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, which is kind of nice for everybody due to the fact the teachers because we live 120 miles from a city or out in the country, and they could schedule a doctor's appointment or take a 3-day weekend with the family and go up to Albuquerque or Santa Fe or someplace. So very rarely does a school teacher in this community take off unless she's deathly sick or her husband broke a leg out on the farm, you know what I mean? She had to go with him somewhere. So the ones that teach the school, both the men and women, we have a couple of men teachers that are there. They're pretty punctual. They do their job. They take care of the children. I think our school is about the 10th or the 9th best school in the state of New Mexico for higher educated children that, you know, go on to college and things, percentage-wise.
Wow.
And,
so that's in Corona where you were Monday through Thursday then, huh?
Yeah, 7:30 until 3:30.
And are you a substitute teacher, or are you a regular teacher there?
No, I'm a substitute teacher. I have a substitute teaching license. You have to apply and go through all the hoops and jumps and show your credentials, and then you pay a fee, and it's like a 4-year driver's license, and you got to renew it again every 4 years.
Now, going back to the University of Detroit, what did you teach there?
No, I didn't. I went to school there to get my BA. They were Jesuit priests there at the UAD, and they also ran the Catholic Central High School for the boys and the girls. They had, I went to St. Benedict's, which is a parish school, high school, but more, I don't know what the word was, affluent people, the automobile factory peoples, or who knows what. But they had Catholic Central and boys. They were Catholic at boys' school and the girls' school. And they were a little tougher to get into, I guess, their entrance exams or whatever. But I had been with St. Benedict's all the time. I didn't want to even try to go there. I was very happy with the children I grew up with and graduated with.
But you said you taught in Detroit. Did you say you taught in Detroit?
No. I think it was only 1 year I taught at Detroit, and I went into the Army.
Oh, okay. Now, were you Korean then? Were you Korean War?
Just at the end of the Korean War, before Vietnam came along, you know what I mean?
Right.
I went 2 years.
I was in the Korean War, but I never got to Korea. I spent all my time in Colorado.
Yeah,
I was in the public information office there, so I never got called to Korea.
Yeah.
But I was in the early days of the Korean War, and I'll tell you, it wasn't any fun because some of my best friends were in the National Guard, and they were sent right over to Korea, and they were like cannon fodder.
Oh yeah.
A lot of them never came back.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so you taught 1 year in Detroit then.
I went to a public FT. I can't remember the name of the school so long ago.
But you taught there, but you taught in a public school. Okay, then what happened when you came?
Then I joined the Army.
Did you get to Korea?
No, it was right after Korea.
Oh, okay.
Graduated in 54, see. So it was after you guys had just come home, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm 80, going to be 81 now, see. So then...
Well, I'm a little older. I'm a little older than you, but...
Well, God bless you. You're still working and getting up every day and doing things.
Oh, yeah. That's right. And, but what was your time in the Army like?
Well, I went to Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri. That's where the people from Michigan went that were just outside of St. Louis there somewhere.
Right.
And I did that, and then they sent me down to Fort Sam Houston, Texas. And that was Brooke Army Medical Center, and I did training there for 6 months as an X-ray technician.
Wow.
And then after that, I guess I stayed in the hospital there and worked until I got out.
Wow. So you were at Leonard Wood?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Up in those hills, those hillbilly hills of Missouri.
I think that's where I was because I was in Missouri.
Well, that's where you would have gone from Michigan to take your basic training.
Yeah, I thought I was at Leonard Wood.
Yeah, and then you'd go to a specialty school if you wanted to, or you'd go right in the infantry and go somewhere else and do your time, you know.
Now, some people, when I do these interviews and talk to people and have them give their testimonies, they said they kind of lost their faith when they went in the service. How about you?
No, I've always been a very conservative Catholic and followed the church's ways and watched the church grow, 50, 60 years, Well, let's see, 50, 60, almost 65 years now since I was a young person. The church has got its own special ways, and it's come a long way. You know, years ago it was all incense and myrrh or whatever in the church.
Yeah.
But now they're going around strumming the banjo and singing songs and tambourines. You know, some churches, Catholic. But it was all hush and quiet and keep your head down back in the 40s, the 50s. Church come a long way, and I'm sure it'll go a long way.
You had priests in the Army there, chaplains?
Yes, we did, uh-huh.
Okay. And
I was very fortunate enough to stay stateside, you know what I mean? And
yeah, well, the same with me.
And then after I got out, I came back home, and, you know, you had 10% veterans preference for being in the military, and I went down there was a place called Fort Wayne. It was like a veterans hospital just a little west of Detroit. And I went to apply for a job as an X-ray technician because I had the training, you know, the certificate or whatever. And that old fellow that was running the place, he must have been left over from the First World War, for sure the Second World War. And he said, young man, he says, go get yourself a job somewhere else because none of us are going to retire.
Wow. So you had a teaching degree from Detroit, from the University of...
but, you know, I went into what they call the wholesale produce business back then. And
you were still in Highland Park then?
No, I moved out of the house in the 60s. I was on my own. And I used to do produce around the city. There used to be if you're from Michigan, you remember Big Bear supermarkets?
Big Bear, I remember hearing of them, yes.
Yeah, there was Piggly Wiggly. They had all kind of different stores in the late 40s and through the 50s. Safeway and Kroger gobbled them all up.
A&P.
A&P's gone too. They're all gone. These kids today don't know what a grocery store was. Smith's was the original guy that put the grocery, him and Kroger guy, put everything together in one building. Because years ago, it used to be the fish market was over there, and then the meat market was down the road, and the guy had a produce stand or something somewhere, and then you'd go to the dairy creamery place to get your milk and stuff. And you remember during the Second World War, in Detroit at least, they used to have Brown's Creamery, and they were horse-drawn carts with big old wooden wheels or rubber-topped wooden wheels. And that horse was trained that he would go, and the milkman had a little rack he'd carry with whatever the customer had ordered, you know. He could jump off that thing, and he'd just snicker a couple times, the horse would stop. And he'd go up to the house and deliver that house and the house next door. And then he'd snicker a couple more times after he got in, and the horse would go about 3 or 4 more houses, and he'd stop, and the milkman had that rack filled up again, and that's how we used to get our milk. Do
you remember You do remember the days before refrigerators when we had ice boxes?
The block of ice on top, yes, I do. I've got plenty of them 25-pound blocks of ice from the ice man's truck. Put it up in the top of Mom's refrigerator. Yeah.
Right, where the freezer is now.
Well, yeah, but they wasn't called a refrigerator. It was called an ice box, and they'd have a big pan underneath.
But that's where the ice was, right up on top where the freezer usually is on a refrigerator. But we had it in the town I lived in, up in the Upper Peninsula. We had a big ice house there. That's where they kept the ice all year. So I don't know what they did in Detroit. They must have something like that there too, right?
Yeah, if I remember that creamy, we used to go down there as children. It was just right outside of Highland Park on the Detroit boundary, because Highland Park was surrounded by the city of Detroit, Highland Park and Hamtramck. Hamtramck was closer to Chrysler, and a lot of the Polish Catholics or Polish people lived in Hamtramck and worked at
That's right.
Chrysler. and a lot of the Catholic people, immigrants and things, lived in Highland Park and worked at Ford's factory. But they used to have at that creamery, because we'd go there in the summer, it was maybe 10, 15 block walk, because everybody walked, nobody had a car. And the guy that took care of the horses that drew the milk carts, when he'd reshoe them, he'd give us the old horseshoes so that we could use them to play horseshoes with out at home.
Oh, yeah.
Experiences that they don't even know about today, son,
Right.
But they had go ahead.
You know how they kept the ice cool?
With sawdust.
They kept the ice sawdust, that's right. That's
right. See, I remember, you remember, but try to tell a kid in the line at Starbucks, he wouldn't know anything about it.
No, that's something. So
I'm so glad that I followed the Catholic faith, ups and downs in life and all the rest, but it's the true religion. It's the only religion. It came right from the Jews, and here we are. God was a Jew to start with, if everybody will remember.
That's right.
Jesus was born to Mary and Joseph, and they were both Jews, and they had to go to record. That's why he was born where he was born, and the rest of the life that he lived.
Now, so when did you get out of Detroit then?
Probably somewhere around 1975. I had saved up enough money, and I decided to go to Denver, Colorado. I used to like to ski, and I don't know if you remember Mount Holly. That was a place north of Detroit, and
I was in the service. I was in the service in Colorado Springs at Fort Carson.
That's just south of Denver. Well, when I went to Colorado in 75, I think it was, there was only one lane of the tunnel open. Now it's 2 lanes, 4 lanes wide, that goes through the mountain by Vail. And the traffic would come and go. They hadn't dynamited the other tunnel thing. And now through the years, it's gotten modern and whatever. But Denver was called the Queen of the Prairie because it sat right at the bottom of the mountain as you'd come down to go to the flatland to go to Kansas and Nebraska. And boy, that town surely took off from 1975 up to the time I retired, I think, close to 1991. It really took off.
So what were you doing out there?
I was in the wholesale produce business. I made a corporation and a company, and all the rest of it.
Wow. From your earlier experiences, huh?
Yeah. What I learned, you got to save your money when you're young because you sure can't make it when you're old.
So you had a successful business there then, huh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So then, what was the spiritual life in Denver? How did you find it there?
It was good. There were Catholic churches. They were more on the modern style during the late 70s and 80s, and stuff.
Yeah.
Not like St. Benedict's with the Gothic cathedral and all the rest of it. But the church has changed through life. You got to hand it to the guys running the church. They must know what they're doing. They're still around since the time of Jesus.
Right.
They're not like those guys on television that are there 1 year and you never see them again another year. No, they're doing good work. Well, tell me about yourself a little bit. I'm getting a little dry here.
Well, I've shared so much, because I've got many programs myself, so people know pretty much about my background. But mainly, like I said, I was a Lutheran actually, and so I converted to Catholicism when I was about 35. Mm-hmm. I was. I went to public schools and went to a Lutheran college, and then I went in the Army and came back, and I got married, and I married a Catholic girl, and we had 5 children, and once the 5 children were grown up, and I had a conversion experience, and I thought, well, I want to be with the family. So I joined the Catholic Church. That's how I got in the Catholic Church.
I see. Okay.
And then, but my vocation was radio, and for 35 years I was a hockey broadcaster. I broadcast Division I hockey, and we played all over the U.S. at Denver and Colorado Springs and Alaska.
Well, when I was a young person
Minnesota,
in the early
Wisconsin. What's that?
When I was a young person in the early 50s, before I went to the Army and maybe after I came back, Abel, Lindsay, and Howell were the big 3 in the Detroit Red Wings. And we'd take the bus down Grand River, that was the artery that went down there, and it would be 65 cents to get a seat in the bleachers to watch the hockey game. Oh, that was a long time ago, and I think the bus ride was only 15 cents. Things have sure changed in America, and I hope it's going to change for the best.
So you were a pretty good hockey fan then, huh?
Well, I started skating, and I was a hockey fan, yes, but I started skating in the parks. In the wintertime, they'd flood an area in Michigan, and it'd be frozen because it was a lot colder back then. And it stayed, froze for quite a while.
Well, I broadcast for Michigan Tech.
Uh-huh.
And so I had my own radio station, and I finally got to the point where I changed the station. It was a secular station, but I made it half Christian. And I had a lot of Catholic programs. I had some Protestant programs too. And then, like I say, I became a Catholic charismatic, and I was on the state service team in Michigan, so I got to Detroit and places like that quite often. Mm-hmm. And then I came out, my wife died, and I sold the station, and I went to Ohio to run a retreat center, and then I came out to Connecticut, and that's where I am right now, and that's where I ran into Sebastian.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think you boys do good work. You're doing real good work. Listen, I'm getting a little tired, Is there another caller? Go ahead.
Let me ask you a couple more questions. When so you had the produce business, and how did you get to New Mexico then?
I got in the car and I drove to Colorado. And I was in Denver all that years. Then I came down and I started a little produce shop here in Albuquerque years and years ago. I think that would be about 92. And I stuck with that until about 1999. I sold the business to a guy, and I retired out here to this piece of property that I bought.
So did you sell your place in Denver?
Oh, yeah. That was a long time ago when the money was good. You could, that's before the big corporations took over the Cisco's, and the Kraft Food and U.S. Foods. Now today a little man, he used to make a good business. We're obsolete, I remember a story my dad told me one time because he was a worker at Ford's. And I'll tell you this little story, and it might give you a little history of life. He was a young man after the First World War, and he got a job on the production line. And Henry Ford was making the cars pretty good. People were getting a little bit affluent. They could buy a $200-300 car or whatever. And Dad was walking out one day, and there was a blacksmith shop right across the street that shoed horses and fixed buggy wheels and stuff. And Dad was kind of familiar with the guy who ran it and everything, and he'd stop over after work, and the old man who ran that blacksmith shop told him, how's it going in there? And he said, well, we're putting them out every so many minutes, and boy, they're really going. he told my dad that. He says, young man, you're putting us guys out of business, us farriers, they called them, guys that did horseshoeing and stuff,
Yeah.
And that's just the way the cycle of life goes, young man. The older fellows have to move aside for the younger peoples to come up and take a hold of the world and try and make it better. Just like Ford and the rest of them, the Dodges and all of them, they made cars. But before that, everybody had to have a horse and a buggy. And before that, they walked, right? So progress in the world and in the Catholic Church, I've watched it for at least 65, 70 years, you know what I mean, as I matured. I've seen it come, and our church is getting stronger and stronger every day. They've shed some of the taboos they had, and they're getting better. And cool. I think they're touching more people's hearts now, because you got to remember, there was only one church, only one Christianity. It was Catholic. Look how many offshoots now they have in the world of different religions and churches. So that's about all I can say for today.
Well, your relative Sebastian is one of the leaders in the Catholic Church to talk, as you said, to make things better, and he's doing a great job of it.
He is a good boy. He is
tremendous.
My sister Mary, God bless her, she's passed a while back. Her son Philip, he died already too. We're all getting old. Was Sebastian's father, and he raised that boy and his sister and brothers real good.
Well, he did a wonderful job, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, one final question. How did you get back into teaching when you'd been away from it so long? Wasn't that difficult?
It's not hard. Once you got the piece of paper, if I was a young person, I could go anywhere in America with that piece of paper and get a job. When I retired out here to the country life, everybody's neighbors, you know what I mean? The superintendent, his folks lived 3 miles down the road. They got a ranch and all the rest of that. Well, anyway, one day I got just a little tired of sitting around reading books. I don't watch a lot of television, and stuff like that. Naturally, we don't have a morning newspaper ever delivered here. And so I thought, well, I still have enough zip to get up and go and do and helping the community. And I know all of those kids because I've known their parents and watched them grow up because I knew their grandparents. Right. When I moved out here, see. So it's so peaceful of a life to live in the country in the old ways.
Beautiful.
God is with you wherever you go. If you live in a city or if you live on the ocean in a liner or if you live on a farm or a ranch, we're all one people under God's rule.
That's right. All right, one final question then. Why are you still a Catholic?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of hard to rub out all those years of going to church and what I believe in. It's my faith. I believe in the Catholic Church. I believe in the Holy Spirit. The Holy Ghost does wonderful things. The division of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost mean a lot to me, son. And I pray every day in my prayers to them.
Beautiful. So what's your last name, Jerry?
No, Rasak.
Say it again.
Rasak.
Rasak. Jerry Rasak in Corona, New Mexico. Who was still a Catholic. He was born a Catholic. He grew up as a Catholic. He was in the service as a Catholic. He's still a Catholic. He loves the Catholic Church.
I really respect our church. Yes, I do.
Thank you very much for sharing all your experiences. We'll visit
another day, okay? We'll talk another day, huh?
All right, Jerry. Good to talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
That's our program for tonight with Jerry. And we'll be back next week, same time, same station, on WCAT Radio. In the meantime, may God bless you. May God bless all of us in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.